I'm going to tell you about tripartite transfers, and we are starting right now. What is going on? I'm Steph from the piu.co.za, and in this video, I'll be looking at tripartite transfers. And you can buy property without having any money. And you can buy property without having any money, and how this can help you grow your property investment portfolio fast. I will discuss the 4 most asked questions about tripartite transfers. If this is your first time here, start by subscribing and clicking the bell icon so that you never miss another video or a live property webinar. Should you have any other tripartite agreement questions, feel free to post them in the comments below. I go through all the comments and try to respond to everyone. What is a tripartite transfer? Tripartite agreement is one where A sells to B, but before taking transfer, B sells to C. The 3 parties, hence tripartite, enter into agreement where the 2 sales are cancelled and A now sells directly to C. Legal and tax implications of a tripartite agreement in South Africa. The Transfer Duty Act stipulates that transfer duty will be payable on any property transaction where applicable. This is also true for tripartite agreements. In our scenario where A sells to B, but before transfer has been registered, B sells to C, we can add some figures to make this more practical. Transfer duty works on a scale. I will have a link in the description below where you can download this for free as reference for future properties you want to invest in. Let's use 2 different examples to see where transfer duty will indeed be payable and what amount gets paid by who. Let's say that seller A sells to B, the first purchaser, for 950,000 Rand, and B sells to C, the second purchaser, for 1.4 million Rand. According to the scale, B would not be liable for transfer duty and C will be liable for transfer duty on the amount of 1.4 million Rand. If, however, B buys for 1.4 million and sells to C for 1.6 million, B will be liable for transfer duty on the amount equal to 11,250 Rand plus 6% of the value above 1375. This calculation and determining if a property is indeed a good investment is critical. As you can see, the profit on face value looks good on our second example. I just want to pause talking about the tripartite agreement and again shift the focus to probably the number 1 aspect of property investment, which is assessing and minimizing your risk. A lot of people always say that property investment is a risky business. It can be very risky if you jump into any deal without running the numbers. I have a video on how to run numbers on any property, which I'll link in the description below, which I encourage all of you to watch. Risk and limiting your liability will always determine if any deal, whether it's property or any other business transaction, is a success. The way that I personally always calculate risk is to work on a forced value scale. Profit may look good on paper at the beginning. If you look at properties we sell, some of them have got an immediate equity of 3, 4, 500,000 Rand. Always base your calculations on a forced market value. What do I mean by this? Do not look at these big property websites where you see properties in a certain area listed for certain amounts. You cannot compare a prospective investment property that you are looking at to a property advertised on a big estate agency website. What I want to come down to is you will probably see in a specific area, if you're looking at a 3-bedroom, 2-bedroom townhouse, and all the figures that I'm using will just be for example, you can maybe pick up a property for 900,000 Rand from a distressed seller or someone that needs to just get rid of the property. Whatever the reason is, it doesn't matter. If you make the mistake of just looking at property websites and seeing what those properties are advertised for, you might find that properties are advertised for 1.6, 1.7, 1.5 million Rand. That can immediately trigger an emotional response that if it's listed for 1.5, there's 600,000 Rand equity in there, which is a lot of money. And if your emotions take over, this can lead to a very bad business decision. You cannot compare properties that are for sale in a specific area and determine what your property is worth. If you go to the deeds office to do a deed search, I'm not mentioning any companies that provide these services, but they are out there. You need to see what those properties similar to yours actually register for in the deeds office. And you'll see that that's a total different scenario than the listing on these big websites. If the area only allows for those 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom units to sell for 1.2 million rand, and again, selling being the actual registration in the deeds office, you still need to account for two things, which is estate agent's commission and probably a tax liability that you will have. When you look at these properties, the risk can be limited if you work on a forced value basis. What do I mean by forced value? If everything in the area registers in the deeds office for a certain amount, your forced value will be below that amount still. This ensures two things. First of all, it limits your liability because you are able to sell that property for less than what the market physically allows, which is the actual registrations in the deeds office, and taking the others out of the race. If you've got similar properties to everyone else currently in the market, and the market only allows for a certain price in that area to be physically registered in the deeds office, in other words, the amount that it sells for versus the amount that it's listed for, if you come in lower than that, it's a forced market value, and your risk is basically zero. If there is still a profit margin between the amount that you can buy this property for and the amount that you can sell this property for, your risk and liability is basically zero. Concluding this quickly, the mistake I see a lot of people make is that they stare blind into what a property might be worth. In other words, they buy for 950 and they see everybody lists similar properties for 1.5 and they stick to that figure because the difference between the purchase price and the selling price is massive. But the time it takes for those properties to sell, no one mentions that on any website. No estate agents, and in all my videos, I sort of try to apologize to estate agents. I'm not attacking estate agents personally. I don't compete with estate agents, and I think most of them do a brilliant job. But no estate agents that's in the business of selling is going to say to a new prospective client that wants to list their property, this is probably going to take a year and a half for this to sell at this price. Because no one is going to use that estate agent. All the time, estate agents say, we will do as much as we can to get this property sold as quickly as possible. But that can mean a lot of things. So limit your risk by using forced value instead of looking at the big profit. Small little secret that everybody knows, but most people forget. Quicker turnaround with slower amounts means bigger money at the end of a longer term. If you sit with that property and there's 600k possible profit in there, but you sit with that property for 2 years versus having done 8 or 9 quick flips for less money, where would you have made more money? I'd leave that to you. It's a rhetorical question. The answer is straightforward. Do not stay blind into big amounts when it comes to property. If you can make some money, flip a property, get it over with, make money. When to use tripartite agreements? Tripartite agreements work particularly well when you work with distressed properties. It doesn't need to be a distressed property. If, like everybody else out there investing in property, you are constantly looking for good deals, you use a tripartite agreement when you have a property that you can buy below market value, and your intent is to sell this property quickly at market value to make a profit. So the straight, simple answer to when you use a tripartite agreement is when there's immediate equity and the market allows for that property to sell fairly fast. Why tripartite is a good option to have. Tripartite agreements, in my opinion, have twofold benefits when it comes to property investing. Number one, it can generate cash quicker. When I say generate cash quicker, I think most of you understand that flipping properties will generate faster money than having a buy-to-let property that you have that you sit with and only sell it after 5 years. So tripartite agreements can have the effect of generating income faster on property. Second and most important, in my opinion, about tripartite agreement is that it's fairly cheap and you can buy property without having any money. And you can buy property without having any money. For those of you that watched my video on how I became a property millionaire in 3 years, you would have heard the story of how I bought my first property and the deal was structured on a tripartite agreement. I had no money when I bought my first property, but I was able to sell that property to a second purchaser, and I was able to enjoy the benefit of receiving the difference between the purchase price that I bought for and the selling price, which I sold to the second purchaser for. Most of you, and I was confused about this in the beginning as well. Most of you will say, yes, but you say you had no money and now you bought a property and sold it to someone else. Remember, a tripartite agreement works that A sells to B and B sells to C for a profit in our example before B takes registration from A. So in other words, in practical terms, and I'll try and make this as simple as possible. If the seller owes 500,000 Rand on a bond and I can acquire that property for 500,000, I sign an offer to purchase with this person trying to sell the property for 500,000 Rand. According to the terms of this contract, I will either have, let's not call it either have, it will either stipulate how long I have to deliver guarantees, which is anything from 10 days to 60 days to 90 days to 120 days. It does not matter how long, but I will have a certain period as to where I have to deliver guarantees to the seller. If in that period that I have got to deliver guarantees to the seller, I'm able to sell this property for a profit to the second purchaser, to C. C will get financing, he'll pay cash, whatever the situation is. But the same as where the seller gave me the opportunity to deliver guarantees on this purchase, I will give opportunity for C to deliver guarantees. Obviously, C buys for the full amount, so the whole transaction is secured by C's guarantees. I hope that makes sense. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more, remember to hit that subscribe button. If you want, no pressure. And if you want to stalk us on social media, the links to our Facebook and Instagram are down below. Hope to see you soon.